Everyone. My name's Brendan. I'm the Senior Director of Policy Strategy at Efficiency Canada. I'm talking to you today from Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. Welcome to our webinar. To those of you joining us for the first time, we host this webinar every 2 weeks. It's meant to bring people interested in energy efficiency in the sector, people interested in learning, to talk about new research, pilots, new topics, innovations. So today we're joined by Betsy Agar and from Efficiency Canada and Brittany and Davidson from the Recover Initiative. And they're going to talk about building retrofits. So our two speakers are going to talk for about 25 minutes, and then we'll be ready to take some questions. So there's a question and answer box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And that is where you should put your questions, not in the chat box, or else they might get lost. But if you want to just chat, you can use the chat box. So today, Betsy and Brittany, they're going to be talking about what we often call here our Retrofit Mission agenda at Efficiency Canada, transforming a patchwork of grants, pilots into a more coordinated effort to scale building retrofits to unlock affordability, good jobs, innovation. This is part of the campaigns we run here at Efficiency Canada. And one of those campaigns is also talking about energy efficiency would make a great nation building project. And if you think that's the case, there's a petition you can sign, and I think we can share that petition link in the chat. So feel free to do that while you're watching the presentation. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Betsy.
Thanks, Brendan. Well, Sava's getting the slides going. I'll just say I'm joining from where I work and live on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples, which is also, for me, known as North Vancouver. Sava. We have the slides? Here we have. She's busy putting links in the thing. Wonderful. Okay. Today, I just want to introduce some of the research that I've been conducting to get a snapshot of what is happening in the world of retrofit acceleration in Canada. I'm going to start with a discussion on how our current system works and what we're really ideally trying to achieve. We're going to use a market transformation lens to look at the research outcomes that I've been generating and assess the state of retrofit acceleration. We're going to explore market shaping activities that create value in markets and how we could potentially interrogate progress of those activities toward actually achieving market transformation. And then I'll finish with sharing just some high-level government recommendations that we're currently proposing before I then get to welcome Brittany to speak. And she's going to talk a little bit about the Recover Initiative, which is a retrofit accelerator in Atlantic Canada. That slide just advanced without me, so I'm just making sure that we're not some weird automatic slide advance. Okay, so first, I want to take a look at how retrofitting typically works in Canada. I really like this depiction of the retrofit market as what we can call an atomized system. In this, the customer is at the center of the atom, leading project management and responsible for complex technical and financial workflows. Of course, there can be variations like hiring a project manager as a proxy for the owner, but really not leading to much change in the decision flows. And so despite clear public benefits of deep retrofits and the availability of historic amounts of low-cost financing and private investment and public funding, Canada really is still failing. Yeah, that's going too fast. It still is failing to stimulate industry transformation at the scale necessary for buildings to meet their net zero objectives. So the complexity and the fragmentation of that atomized system is just perpetuating a cycle of single measure retrofits. So I like to depict this as any attempt of normalizing retrofits. It's a little bit like trying to map stellar constellations, but if all the stars in our beloved Ursa Minor were to burn out, we have the Milky Way. It wouldn't look any different. It's really just too small to matter. And the retrofit galaxy is as complex and expansive as the Milky Way. It has a huge number of nodes and relationships that we only understand in terms of discrete projects. If we are to deliver retrofits at market scale, we need a governance model that coordinates client value proposition with a simplified interface, supply chain integration with industrialization, and finance mechanisms that are innovative and accessible. The good news is there are groups working throughout Canada who are trying to accelerate retrofits by overcoming these systemic barriers. So over the last several months, I've been interviewing experts working on the ground, including recipients of the Deep Retrofit Accelerator Initiative, as well as the Greener Neighborhoods Pilot Program, or DRE and GNPP, as I'll continue to call them, plus groups working completely independent of these funding buckets. They're funded both publicly and also privately. And despite the constrained and messy state of retrofitting in Canada, these groups are starting to create potential for retrofit system building. And I've broken this down to kind of 5 big categories of the value add activities that they're doing. One is they're understanding local markets. And so with local boots on the ground, they can look at local quirks and the industry needs to really kind of help avoid assumptions about how the markets are functioning. For example, adapting to supply chain flows that have really regionally unique characteristics. This could look like having different reasons for bottlenecks. And identifying low or even zero cost practices that help contractors unlock savings and pass those benefits along to customers. And those third-party entities who aren't selling anything, they're mobilizing market actors by building trust with owners, for example, in solutions, as well as trust in industry that provide those solutions, such as by providing improved practice standards. And they're also aligning fragmented ecosystem actors and offerings, so making it less complicated to navigate. They're also partnering to demonstrate innovations, such as using prefab panels in retrofits and saddle or window-mounted heat pumps. And they're even testing the feasibility of directional drilling for geothermal heating, which could help where land constraints mean large fields of boreholes are not possible. And they're helping to address costs and help owners make the business case for retrofits, such as by reducing soft costs through streamlined pre-construction studies and assessments, and through better project coordination and informed planning, such as by bundling projects under something like an integrated design process, for example. They're also building relationships with financial institutions and their trust in the market solutions, and advising government on how to improve accessibility of complex funding mechanisms like tax credits. And finally, they're figuring out ways to incorporate social value into the retrofit process, such as centering projects around social objectives like reducing energy poverty, it's racing me again, and building equity into projects through social contracting, which can mean integrating equitable hiring practices into business models. What these entities know is that retrofitting a series of buildings is not what will transform our retrofit galaxy. In fact, the problem calls for changing many activities and many interactions over time to create the ideal end that we're seeking. And we do believe that NRCan understood the need for system transformation when they developed both STRAE and GMPP, but they're really built around the premise that expanding retrofits, even through single interventions, will have that simple cause and effect. So we collectively continue to try to measure success through some simple metrics, like we tally up reports and projects, we estimate energy or GHG reductions, and we continue to churn out cost-benefit analyses. And those numbers of cost-effective interventions, savings, they can definitely signal market shifts, but they don't necessarily point to a sustained market transformation or enhance system-wide value. So our host today, Brendan Haley, wrote Efficiency Canada's Retrofit Mission report in 2021, and it was really a critique of the standard approaches that we still take on. The thrust of it was essentially that the whole system needs to change, and we need organizations that are dedicated to thinking about what is needed and how to change that system. You'll be familiar with this graphic. We're in the process of updating it, maybe to be a little bit less confusing, but it captures the ideas behind the Retrofit Mission. In this framework, intermediaries who are noted here in the green boxes in the center of the graphic on the left, these are called market development teams. They take on big, hairy, audacious goals. These are goals that no other market actor has the resources to take on. These are big challenges that can't be solved through simple unicorn projects. Instead, they need to be reshaping market interactions and coming up with transformative solutions that can then be replicated across the country. In this model, a mission leader that's noted at the top helps align resources by coordinating and facilitating market development teams, strategically supporting problem solving and delivery of larger scale systemic interventions, and helping intermediaries scale up through diffusion of solutions. And then, of course, also tracking and evaluating progress on achieving the largest systemic goal, delivery of mass retrofits. Or if we want to use the Prime Minister's terms, a retrofit mission means doing big things through practical solutions. And these practical solutions are represented by the dark teal circles in the graphic on the right, which I know is probably completely illegible. If you'd like to get into the details of that, the report is online. The micro projects that intermediaries are taking on even now really could have macro level potential with strong, clear executive commitment and supportive central leadership. So we know that there are no clear solutions to wicked problems, and static incremental assessments that measure linear progress are really unable to capture and analyze the compounding actions that are needed to facilitate systems change. So how do we evaluate progress in system building? We need to focus on the means of improving learning rather than counting simple metrics that do little more than prove that we're being accountable. So we see this as through market shaping, which can look like entrepreneurialism, taking measured risks that can be incrementally scaled over time and informing how decision makers can adapt and respond. This then creates conditions where markets open potential for advanced policy and regulation that support public agendas. And this includes shaping market interactions. Markets are relational, not just transactional, which is a long game of trust building. Intermediaries are neutral third parties, as I mentioned, and they don't have a revenue agenda. They work on getting the relationships right and building trust between ecosystem actors. And that also means they're helping with market diffusion, which is actually often left up to the market. But with so many diverse and dispersed market actors and options, the space is confusing and crowded, whereas intermediaries can help move the market along the adoption or S curve by supporting experimentation and replication of technologies and practices, or by testing innovative ways of doing things, learning and ironing out the kinks, and passing it on to other actors that might be more capable of scaling up. And finally, looking at market potential. So these market shaping activities can open spaces of opportunity and generate value, such as increasing retrofit productivity or reducing market friction. And intermediaries can create potential for innovation, for new businesses, for new business models, as well as investment opportunities and community value. The mission-oriented system change framework could build on the ideals of the DRE and GNPP program and help the government of Canada strategically deliver on its policy agenda to improve productivity through modern methods of construction, economic resilience and innovation and growth of Canadian businesses, as well as a growing skilled workforce, and also to achieve domestic energy sovereignty and security by replacing reliance on insecure fossil fuels with domestically produced energy efficiency and clean electricity. So to do this, we're recommending that the federal government recapitalize DRE and GNPP. We see this as topping up funding for the existing groups to maintain momentum, but also to improve coverage throughout Canada by folding in some more groups that are already active in multiple corners of the country. These groups bring high value for little cost, and their work complements other government objectives. The second thing that we would recommend is that we revise these program mandates to reflect some of the things that I just mentioned. DRE and GNPP might not be perfect, but they really are proving to be good starting points for transforming Canada's retrofit system. And at a high level, we recommend giving intermediaries a system building mandate, being really clear about that, including learning from what is not working that can be equally valuable, and empowering them with the autonomy to take incremental risks. They're, as trusted third parties, they're embedded in industry, and they really need to be taking on the risk that other actors can't afford to take. And then ultimately, we envision integration of retrofits into the national housing agenda, such as through a retrofit mission. Existing buildings make up the vast majority of the building stock, and they are integral to solving Canada's housing and affordability challenges. So given all that, it is my pleasure to invite Brittany from Recover to introduce their business model and the vision for market transformation.
Thanks, Betsy, and thanks for having me today. So as Betsy mentioned, I'm Brittany. I'm the Interim Executive Director at Recover, and we are Atlantic Canada's Deep Retrofit Accelerator. And so in line with Betsy's theme today of market transformation, we've really positioned Recover as the tide that lifts all boats. And we strongly believe that the only way to truly accelerate deep retrofits is when all the market actors are working in concert. And those market actors are represented by the little boats here, which are blurred to building owners, industry professionals, public sector, equity deserving communities, supply chain. And so we have 3 core areas of focus that are all aimed at breaking barriers to deep retrofits. And I'm going to take a minute to brag about some of the exciting activities that we have on the go right now. So in research, we are doing applied research and developing tools that drive change at scale. So we have 2 comprehensive retrofit roadmap reports for the region that'll be launching in the summer. And these are really robust bodies of work. One's commercial and one's residential, where we've aggregated all of Atlantic Canada's building stock. So I think it's over 850,000 buildings. We've grouped them into 20 archetypes and run over 400 energy and financial models to synthesize it into a report with clear policy recommendations. We're also working on the first of its kind socioeconomic impact study for the region, and this is designed to rigorously assess emissions and equity impacts and model them into acceleration pathways. And this is really meant to inform Recover's programs and also policy. And so these first 2 things are, to Betsy's point earlier, these are the things that you can't really capture on a scorecard when you're only looking at incremental projects. We've also partnered with Open Technologies on virtual audits. And this year we're undertaking applied research to compare virtual audits with traditional ASHRAE feasibility study in order to promote the uptake of virtual audits. And we're developing some really cool technology, including a costing database for a user-friendly total cost of building ownership modeling application. We are literally flying planes over buildings here in collaboration with Liquor Geo, where we're making a predictive modeling tool that you can actually click down on a map and see whether a building has a rooftop unit and a panelization design tool. In capacity building, this is activities that advocate for systemic change and workforce readiness. So we do job shadowing programs for youth. We develop training that prepare the workforce for mass deep retrofits. And we aim to connect youth with careers in deep retrofits. This group also ensures that equity deserving communities are included in our research and are brought in early to not only participate in, but shape our program development. And they also focus on systemic case studies that create awareness around barriers that are faced by equity deserving communities. For building owners, and this is work that's on activating projects and moving projects into implementation. And so while it might seem like this work is a bit more micro, kind of individual project based, we're really intentional in the projects that we choose. And we aim to choose buildings that feed into our archetype research so that we can scale those models and do case studies to show here's how your building could be transformed, and also to provide learnings on how to address complex buildings. Provide a feasibility study or funding for a feasibility study. We want to take that feasibility study, provide guidance, link that with the financial case and the business case, and layer in the non-energy benefits with the goal of actually getting a project funded and moving into implementation. So a win for us is not a completed feasibility study, it's a project and implementation. And then coming very soon, we're going to be able to offer total cost of building ownership modeling and non-energy benefit modeling in-house. Next slide, please. So in my previous slide, I hinted about some of our recent new partnerships, but I wanted to take a moment to kind of highlight how these partnerships are an example of how we are building an ecosystem. So first, the business case for deep retrofits isn't always clear, and in order for projects to move forward at scale, it needs to make financial sense to building owners. And this is through strengthening the business case. So this is why we've partnered with Agar to be able to offer non-energy benefit modeling in Atlantic Canada using their M-Benefits approach. So by showing and assigning a dollar value to often hidden benefits of deep retrofits like improved air quality, reduced downtime, tenant comfort, the return on investment becomes more obvious. We've also acquired CFAR Building Analytics, and they're a leader in the total cost of building ownership modeling approach. And we wanted to bring this capability in-house to be able to do this modeling, but also so that we can automate it, get it in the hands of more people, and start changing the conversation away from simple paper. As I mentioned on my previous slide, we partnered with OpenTech to expand access and improve uptake on virtual audits. So a lot of building owners can't afford a feasibility study, and they want early kind of directional information about whether they should embark on a project. However, the market hasn't fully embraced virtual audits yet, and we're trying to change that with our research. And finally, one of the biggest barriers to deep retrofits is finance. So through our building transformation program, we try to connect building owners with innovative financing models like Efficiency Capital's infrastructure as a service model, and they benefit from a strong business case and a building owner with buy-in. So basically, we're connecting the dots to try and drive momentum. Next slide, please. So Betsy also wanted me to touch a bit on Recover's structure and how we are thinking about life post-DRE. So right now we're a nonprofit with approximately 15 full-time employees, and we've received funding for a 3-year startup period from DRE, GMPP, and also HCI3, ECHO, and the McConnell and Trottier Foundations. However, the DRE funding was intended to support our startup phase, and a big deliverable under our mandate is the development of a sustainability plan for when the funding sunsets. So through exploring various revenue sources, which I've listed on the right of the slide, we do have a plan in 2028 to be majority self-funded with grants for program-specific support. But that being said, a renewal of DRE would be a huge weight off our shoulders and give us a bit more runway to gain sales traction. And it would also mean being able to keep up the activities at the same rate that we're doing now. So those important bodies of research that are really robust. 3 years is an impossible amount of time to build a team from scratch, to build and pilot programs, and then to also see results from those programs. So with that, I'll end with a huge shout out to our small but mighty team that has really moved mountains in the past 2 years, and we're looking forward to the last year of DRE.
Great.
I didn't tell you, Brittany, I popped on that QR code. So anybody who's curious about Recover, they can just log in through that. If they like. Sorry, Brenda.
Oh, it's okay. I was wondering what it was. I was also wondering if there's a dinosaur in the middle of it or something. All right. Thank you both. We have some questions coming in. So I am going to read them off and you're going to answer them. So I think a lot of them are for Brittany. So first one, Brittany, how did you do the modeling? It sounds extensive. A bit more about that.
I can't say I was directly involved, but it's coming very soon. And if you want to get on a waiting list to have that when it comes out, that's on our website. And also, if you want to reach out, I can connect you with head of research who can walk you through that.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to just go to the next one, which I think a lot of these are for Brittany. I like, it says, it looks like Recover's doing an amazing job in Atlantic Canada. So does Ontario have a similar initiative? Actually, this is probably a good one for Betsy.
It's probably better for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Ontario has lots of options depending on what kind of building model you're looking at. Just one kind of clarification, like DRE was really focused on large complex buildings, so part 3, if you will. And GNPP does work more in the part 9, smaller buildings, technology testing. So there's also some gaps between those two programs that we would see filled. So to your question about Ontario, TAF, the Atmospheric Fund, runs a DRE or Retrofit Accelerator program in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area. But there are some cool things going on in Ottawa as well. I can't remember the name of the Retrofit Accelerator there. And then for the smaller buildings, there's EnviroCenter Ottawa that's working at, I think somebody put in a question about strata townhouses. They would be tackling those kinds of projects. So there's actually lots going on. You can look to see who's actually funded through DRE and GNPP, but as I mentioned, there are groups that are working outside of those two funding programs as well.
Great, thanks. Okay, next question. How have building owners perceived the quantification of non-energy benefits of retrofits? I think that might be one for Brittany. And if you haven't done that work yet, maybe how do you perceive them?
Yeah, so we just signed this partnership in March, so we're still early. We're integrating it into our operations, and we're going to be offering it through our building transformation program, but also doing the modeling standalone. But we want to use this approach to really highlight that there are non-energy benefits, and also showing and shedding light on the fact that there are dollar values and you can calculate these things. So reduced absenteeism, there is a way to estimate that and put that in your payback calculations and in your return on investment. So we have some marketing efforts to do there, but that's what we're thinking.
And so, Brittany, you've touched on commercial buildings. So this is attractive for businesses who want to make sure that their employees are happy and healthy in their jobs. And when we start to get into residential buildings, there's a lot of interest in trying to figure out the health and safety and resilience impacts of living in buildings that are poor performers. Typically, the worst buildings or worst kind of housing complexes are also the most affordable. And so we tend to have more vulnerable populations in these spaces. There are direct public health impacts starting right at home where folks should be safe and sound and healthy. So there are international efforts trying to put prices or costs on ignoring the quality of homes and performance of homes, the costs that are incurred by the health system. But it is not an easy one to calculate. The one that's really quite prescient, there are a couple. When we think about, we now seem to have fire season. Increasingly, we need homes that can block out smoke but while making sure that there's still fresh air. So through good ventilation and filtration. And we're seeing municipalities such as New West just set a maximum temperature standard. And it can't be hotter than 26 degrees Celsius for a number of days in a row. This is really just a mirror of something that we've had on the books for cold temperatures. So as those types of realizations and benefits and regulations come into play, increasingly that should provide very clear rationale for building owners and homeowners for upgrading these buildings for those benefits.
Great. Okay, another quite specific question, which is cool. Can you please describe the virtual auditing procedure? That might be one. Maybe we could start with Brittany, and then Betsy, you might have some thoughts of what you're seeing across the country.
Yeah, so with open text model specifically, and we did evaluate a number of models before deciding to partner with open text specifically. It's a series of fairly low not a lot of labor required to answer 27 questions that goes into the platform. And then it does do a bit of scenario modeling. And then we're also testing out their inaugural launch of their Data Lite version, which is the same 27 questions, but you don't have to answer them all. And it will still directionally tell you whether a building is a good candidate for a deep retrofit. So we're thinking about using that for screening portfolios, or for us, as we get a lot of buildings inbound, which ones are going to be a good fit to help funnel our programs. But we just want to really create awareness that it's out there as a tool.
Yeah, and I can't speak to the actual processes or like how you do the virtual auditing other than generalizing what you can know about certain building archetypes and mapping those onto. So, for example, Recover's developed that building stock map, and we can start to really plan, okay, this region has a collection of buildings that are like this. They probably need these types of supports. There can be a tension between virtual auditing versus level 1, 2, 3 energy audits. I think that as long as we're clear that they're serving different purposes, we don't fall into this trap of virtual audits may not be enough to, say, secure financing because it can't really guarantee that the solutions being proposed, or it can't provide the guarantee that financing needs to go forward without risk. But we get in this trap of we don't know enough. So we need data collection, and then we get into this trap of, we need all this data because it needs to be accurate. And I think we can get buried in this kind of perfection where, virtual auditing opens up this possibility of what can we map a baseline and then do better from there because we know what to target at the very least.
Great. Okay, this is a longer question. I'm going to read it all because I think it's good context. So Matthew says, in his experience, the contractor has the most influence over the shape of the retrofit and what it actually takes in terms of the depth of work, the approach, materials used, mechanical sizing, etc. Their interests and knowledge aren't always aligned with the optimal outcome for the homeowner or building owner as for mitigation and adaptation. Is there any exploration in the retrofit mission of models that put an independent technical professional at the center of that decision-making process, rather than leaving it to whoever's swinging the hammer? I'm also going to just suggest that the broader issue of the people doing the work and their incentives and what they're doing. Who wants to tackle that one?
I'm happy to speak to it. I think I alluded to, we can substitute in a proxy for the owner, but those decision flows in our current system seem to still be that kind of complex back and forth and coordination. We would love to see more integrated business models. So who do you most often see in your house? It's the person who comes and fixes or cleans up your furnace. Maybe you have your water heater served or serviced each year. They're the ones who have the most contact. So we'd love that to be the person who goes, and by the way, you could make these improvements to your home. Your equipment would work better. You would feel better in your home. You would save on your energy systems. Here's the kind of network of contractors that are available to you. And they're this central, supportive sort of place where you can access the resources that you have. It's exactly what we're striving for, but we're not there. We just plugging a new professional into that center isn't getting us to that more comprehensive building improvement state.
Sorry, I was breaking up, or you were breaking up a bit there for me.
Brittany. Yeah, you just paused there, Brittany. Try again. Go for it.
I was just saying right now we are with kind of our small team and our scope, we are focused in that project readiness and project activation space and then influencing policy. But we do recognize that and those later steps. And we're trying to work with our building owners to see what programs or services could be needed in the actual implementation and design phases that would help influence a true deep retrofit along the way. And I think that's part of what doing our business case through our building transformation program. We want to get the building owner bought.
Thanks. We missed the very end. We caught 95% of it. I know that me reading what Betsy's working on, there's also interesting examples of integrated design and integrated project delivery models that are being promoted by retrofit accelerators, which are also, I think it's not just like an audit or something involved. It's really trying to get all the incentives aligned of everybody involved in the project. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left because we have a strict rule of giving people 15 minutes for their whatever lunch break or period they're on. So I'm going to just jump into a next question I see, which is how can utility provided incentive programs best tie into this initiative?
And I think that's a great question. I would actually flip it and go, if all of these groups working on the ground are creating these standards of practice and these streamlined ways of making the retrofit process easier, embedding things like equity into their procurement, leaning into the objectives that we're trying to achieve in Canada, which includes social benefits as well as environmental benefits. It's how do utility programs, adjust their incentive programs so that they actually take in all of these learnings and start to build in these best practices as part of their incentive programs. And we actually have an interesting example with Sask Power. They run their own retrofit accelerator as well. And they have sort of very specific examples of how they're amplifying the incentive programs that they already have and able to get building owners to do more and invest more in their own buildings because they're able to show these broader benefits.
Brittany, do you have anything to add about that? Oh, she might be frozen again.
Yeah. Hello. Oh, sorry, I'm freezing, but I actually don't have a background in this industry. My background is finance and biotech more so. The more kind of industry specific questions, I think Betsy's done a great job of answering.
Great. I might chime in on this if I may, because when I wrote that report back in 2021, I really tried to explain that there's almost a different policy paradigm and policy objectives between utility demand side management and what these retrofit market development teams or retrofit accelerators are doing. So utility demand, I have a history of working to advocate for utility DSM, actually in Nova Scotia in particular. But the argument was always that this is a more cost-effective way to manage a utility system than producing power plants. And so that has some costs and benefits to advance certain types of things, but essentially the measures and the projects need to be fairly cost-effective and are put under quite restrictive cost-benefit analyses. But the job of these retrofit accelerators, I think, are to take the stuff that might not be cost effective today by those narrow cost benefit analysis and try to change the system so that they become cost effective. So I think that's a good thing because they're both trying to accomplish different objectives in the policy system. And that's why the federal government taking on these initiatives is additive and hopefully contributes to utility DSM. But it's something that utility DSM has real trouble doing, is thinking about how to introduce new technologies, make retrofits lower cost, faster, higher scale. Okay, we have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask one more question. We'll try to answer it really quickly. So this is a doozy one, though. It seems that the average cost of a deep retrofit is about $100K. How can we achieve it without any government policy to help building owners?
Yes.
I mean, can I try to answer that one? I would say that without government policy, I guess I would question the premise is every sector has government policy. Right now we have a defense industrial policy, and the defense sector is one of the oldest sectors in the world. If you're a manufacturer, you still have the Industrial Research Assistance Program. I don't think government policy is ever going to go away, but one of the jobs of these market development teams is to understand the market and the policy system over the life cycle of the sector, if you will. And deep retrofits are still largely artisanally done. And the role here is to really think about how can we change the system to make them scale more, make them lower cost, make them higher benefit. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish in the policy system today. But that will engender perhaps those utility DSM incentives coming in, or different types of financing products coming in, the private sector picking up more of it. But I personally don't necessarily see there ever being a need for no policy or even organizations that are continuously monitoring the market and thinking about what it needs next and how it can continue to operate more effectively, because we actually have that in a whole bunch of other sectors as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the goal here is really at this phase to normalize deep retrofits, to do the research like we're doing through the roadmap research and through the socioeconomic impact study, and then taking those bodies of work to influence policy and introduce new programs.
All right, we're out of time. So thank you so much both for your presentation and answers to the questions. Thank you everyone for contributing in the chat and asking your questions. So on May 22nd, we're going to have another one of these, and that's going to all be about Canada's green workforce with the Future Skills Center and the Canada Green Building Council. And a reminder again, if you think energy efficiency should be a nation building priority for the federal government, there's a petition we have that you can sign. You can get your mom and dad to sign, your neighbors and your friends and fellow geeks in the energy efficiency world. So please consider doing that. And have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.